There we are. Perfect. All right. So I'm just going to give it a couple minutes just to make sure everybody is in and everybody can hear and see. Brilliant. And then we're going to begin. For those of you who don't know who I am, who don't know what we do, my name is Gemma Zoe Smith. I am the director of a company called The Education Hotel. And we are fairly large, I suppose, in the 11 plus community. This year we were shortlisted for private tutoring provider of the year due to our 11 plus work. And we support just under 100 students every year in terms of getting students through 11 plus exams for both grammar and independent. And you'll see a few of the team in a little bit. I'll introduce you to some of the team we have working, and you can see how we specialize because we split it quite a lot within the team. So hopefully, I think we probably have anyone who is due to be in here. There we are. I think we should be good. We are screen sharing. Just want to make sure it's all correct. Okay. Dun, 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 dun. There we are. Perfect. All right. And so we should be able to begin. Oh, we just got an extra person. Just as I said that. All right. Brilliant. So hopefully everyone is here to learn a little bit more about what preparation for the 11 plus can look like at home. Because whether you choose to tutor, whether you choose to do group classes, and I will mention about our group classes in a bit, you are still going to be preparing at home. You're still going to be doing some of that preparation. And so it's important to know how you do that to be able to support students at home. Okay, so as I said, we are the Education Hotel. We work in lots of different areas, but probably I would say we focus a large amount on GL and super selective schools. At least that's where I specifically focus. We are published pretty much everywhere in national newspapers. I tend to pop up talking about 11 plus, and I also admin two of the larger 11 plus groups, that's private and grammar school information group, as well as the independent schools info group. So those are a little bit about us. We've been doing this for, I think it's probably over 13 years now. And so 11 plus is something that is fairly common. In fact, for me, it's even more common because that is me age 10. I took the 11 plus age 10 and I ended up attending the Chelmsford County High School for Girls, which is selective grammar, down in Essex. I was the first person in my family, and I am still the only person in my family to go to grammar school. Obviously, grammar schools are not everywhere in the country, so that isn't that I was the only person who could have got there. It is the only choice that my family made. Lots of my cousins lived nearby, and they chose not to try out for grammar school. My parents, they're also not from an educated background. They left school at 14 and 16. My dad is a builder and my mum is a cleaner. So I do not come from the background of having highly educated parents or having parents who knew a lot about the grammar school exams. My dad didn't live in Essex for all of the time. And although my mum had been brought up there, she went to the local state school. So for us, when we first of all started this process, it was completely new. And I know that there will be some of you sitting here listening to this and thinking, you know what, we're new to it as well. We haven't been through this process before. And for other of you, you might have had cousins, you might have had brothers, sisters, lots of your family might have considered grammar. As I said, we now support around 100 students into 11 plus schools. That's both independent and grammar. We support students via groups. And as I said, for me personally, I continue to tutor. So I continue to work with students looking at 11 plus. And we've got around 30 tutors who do different bits of the 11 plus. So, and I'm going to start right from basics, because I think it's important that that maybe some people are sitting here thinking, oh, is it the type of thing that I can do? If you're looking for grammars, this is particular, then only the areas that are in red do grammar schools. And that's not a lot of the country, but that is fairly populated areas of the country. Test takes place in year 6. It's taking place at the moment. So our current students are going in to take those tests, September and October. They sit it usually at one of the grammar schools that they're applying to. It depends on how many you've got, and if they're using different exam boards as to whether they will sit multiple tests. As I said, it's only in a few counties, and it can consist of English, Math, VR, NVR, verbal reasoning and non-verbal reasoning for those 2 acronyms. In English, there is also often, not always, a creative writing part. And the key thing is it's not prepared for at States. Even many independent schools, as I said, they prepare generally for 11 plus sometimes, but often they're looking at independent 11 plus exams and not grammar. And those are slightly different in the way that they present. Little break for a cup of tea. So you might be coming to this as a parent, could be in year 3, year 4, year 5, and thinking, right, somebody along the way has maybe mentioned the grammar schools, maybe has said that my child should apply, has recommended that we take a look, and I'm now starting to think, how am I going to prepare for this? Because not all the skills are taught at State. Now, some of those skills are, but often not to the level that's required for 11 plus, and often not to the depth. So your children will do comprehension, for example, but you might find that some of the comprehension's a little bit different to if they were to sit in front of an 11 plus paper. They will also do a number of the math skills, but for some highly selective independent style schools that maybe have something called a second stage, which I'll explain to you again in a moment. For all of those, they're unlikely to reach some of the things that are tested. So some of the things that might be tested would be sequences, algebra, kind of basics. Those types of things are more likely to not be taught in school. Okay, I'm throwing out loads and loads of vocab here, and I know that it can get a little confusing. So what do we mean by catchment, sibling policy, super selective, second rounds? What do I mean by all of those things? Okay, they're things that you will find they're spoken about a lot when it comes to Facebook groups, or you hear other parents in the playground, and it makes the whole process seem as though it is more scary than it is. So admissions rules. The admissions rules for the school are published. They are published on the school website every single year. I support students and families often to go through those because they can be a little bit confusing, but it will say things like catchment. Catchment is where you live. It's where you live either, and it depends on the school you're applying to, either at the point that you take the 11 plus, or at the point that you start the school, or any point in between those. And dependent on the school, depends on what their catchment policy is. So every single year, I have people come to me and say, my child scored XXX, but we're not in catchment. And I say, well, there's nothing you can do. Because if your school has a strict catchment policy, then it doesn't matter, because that is the first hurdle that you need to be over. So if you are looking, grammar schools, this isn't independent will take you. But if you're looking at a grammar school and you're thinking, I would really like to go to a particular grammar school, I say St Olave's, then check out its catchment, and the catchment can change. So don't rely on what happened 4 years ago. Don't rely on what somebody else has told you. Please look at it yourselves. And if you're stuck, drop me a message, because I'd rather that you look into that before signing up for tuition, before signing up for group classes, than get to the end of that process and realize you don't actually sit in catchment. Some schools have a sibling policy. That means that if your elder child is already at that school, the younger child has either automatic entry or they have to achieve lower in a entrance exam. It really depends. Some schools are what we call super selective. Those are the ones that I typically focus on. It is often schools that do not have a catchment policy. QE, Queen Elizabeth Barnet, for example, does not have a catchment policy. That means that lots of students, it is a boys only, but lots of the boys around will apply to QE. It's a really high percentage. Therefore, it is a super selective school because they only take a very small percentage of students. And whilst we say a score of above 95%, I don't necessarily mean that they have to do over 95% in a test. What we're saying is that it's the top percentage of people who end up going. Now, that might mean the year you take it, it's actually not 95% and over, it's 80-something% and over. But it is talking about the percentage of students at the top. Some schools have something called a second stage. Okay, they're school specific. Only students who pass the first round are invited. And those second rounds, they could be a bit more detailed. They often have things like creative writing, maybe more extensive math, things that you have to put your working down into. And for some schools, for independents especially, you might have to also consider an interview. Now, you might be sitting here and you might be thinking, okay, but Gemma, I've got a really specific question. And what I would love for you to do is to drop me a message in the chat. So if you have something that you think, I really need to know this, and if it's school specific, I'm unlikely to be able to help on the live. But if it is something that is more general, please do write it down in the chat for me so that I can go over it. Okay, again, I'm doing this to try and fill you in. Lots of the time, you will see people write about different types of, they look like just little letters, but they're not. They're different exam boards. CSSE, GL, SET, FSCE. There are lots of different acronyms, but they are all different tests. And it depends on where your school is based as to what they will use as their exam board. Think of it like different supermarkets, I suppose. A different school will go and pick up its questions from a different exam board. And those different exam boards have slightly different ways of writing. They also have slightly different things that are included, styles of question, subjects that are included, and it depends on the school. The school doesn't always choose the same thing. So for example, I'll go back to my QE example. Queen Elizabeth Barnet does GL. GL is a provider, the biggest provider, that does 4 different types of 11 plus: math, English, verbal, non-verbal. Now, Queen Elizabeth Barnet only take maths and English. Other schools in the GL, taking GL questions, may choose all 4 subjects. So this is why I'd say it's really, really important to go to those target schools, to look at them, see whether your child wants to go there, but also to be really clear on what the exams are. Because as you can see, test papers are different lengths. You've got different subjects that might be included. And for some of them, it's really important to look into what those are, because something like FSCE, Future Stories Consortium, they're fairly new and they have a completely different style to many of the other exam boards. So you've got to be really quite clued up. So, this is already very, very confusing. What can you do? Firstly, shortlist your target schools. Take a look in your area if you know you're not going to move. If you think you might move, take a look at where you might move to. Contact every one of those target schools. I'm a tutor. I have done this for over 13 years. I do this with hundreds of students probably every year. Why do I ask you to contact the school? Well, mainly because I can't be expected to keep every single school in my head. Now, I have a list, I have a database where I'm on every school email list, and I make sure that I am updated about every school exam change. However, you might not choose to have tuition with us. You might not choose to take group classes with us, and that means that you may not get that information. If you have contacted every single school you are interested in, and you have asked for them to send you any update about changes, they will put you on a list. They put me on the same list. It means that you are then aware if there is anything that changes. And schools do change. They change their catchment. They change their exams. Reading, for example, changed to Future Stories fairly last minute, and changed what they were doing for the 11 plus fairly last minute. And if you were not up to date, you wouldn't have known that for a couple of months, and you don't want to be the last to find out. So get hold of those schools. Don't rely on anyone. Okay. And I'm saying this as someone who sends hundreds of students, right? I know what I'm doing. And I'm still telling you to get hold of the schools. The reason that I'm telling you to get hold of the schools is because they have a duty to you to tell you if they're changing. And that is the most important thing, is to make sure that you are aware. I know that there are lots of tutors out there that say, oh, don't worry, we'll deal with it. But I would rather that we deal with it and you deal with it, because that way nothing gets missed. Number 3, read the school's admissions pages. They can be a little bit confusing, but they are usually possible. Okay, you go through them, they've got a map, and with the map, they usually talk about catchment, and they can talk about outer and inner catchment, and that is something that you've got to be aware of. They will also talk about what they expect to be looking at for an exam. And also they'll talk about sibling policies. They'll talk about everything that comes with admission. So you will see, for example, in there, a policy around what's called looked after children. Looked after children are children who are fostered or adopted. So they have a policy around that. They will have an SEN policy as well. They will have a policy, if there is one, about siblings. So you need to make sure that you're clued up. Number 4, book tuition, group classes, etc. It can help you to have a framework. If you're working at home with your student, you want to know, what are they doing? Otherwise, and you can prepare entirely at home. Okay, and I'm saying this again as a tuition provider, but it's tricky because you need to get through all of the information and then you need to do all of the practice. Something like tuition group classes will provide you with a timetable. And then number 5, and it may seem really early, but if you're looking for some of those highly selective schools, start to consider mocks. There's quite a few Parent-Teacher Association, PTA mocks, that get put on by grammar schools, which are worth considering. Then you've got to look at, where are we looking to, if we're looking to book mocks, where are we looking to take holiday? It helps to plan your year. And yes, I am saying that knowing that some of you have students who are in year 3 or year 4. Because if you don't have a think ahead, and you don't need to book mocks now if you're students in year 3, but if you start to think ahead, then you can start to plan your time. Okay. Grammar versus independent. And I know that there's a couple of you here who are applying for independent schools. And every year there's always a couple of people who are doing both grammar and independence. So 11 plus is the major entrance point for grammar schools. I'm going to say that again, is the major entrance point for grammar. Don't let anybody tell you that 12 plus and 13 plus is a grammar school entrance place. It's not. Those are designed for rare occurrences. They are not standard entry points. So you will see that banded around quite a lot on, again, Facebook groups and by parents. Oh, we're going to look into 12 plus. Most grammar schools will take 1 or 2 students at that point. Okay, so if you are looking at grammar, 11 plus is your major entrance point. But independent schools, it used to be a split between 13 plus and it used to be a split between 11. But nowadays, actually, 11 plus is growing. There's a whole load of different acronyms. And I know some of you are not that interested in it, but just so that we've gone over it, we've got something called an ICEB pretest. It's online and it's English, Maths, VR, NVR, and it's multiple choice. You've got an ICEB 11 plus, which is a paper-based. It used to be only a handful of girls' schools. It's changed a bit. CEM Select, it's a different, again, it's an online style of 11 plus test, sometimes used by schools. Cat 4 is often used by prep schools and independent schools, and it's looking at where a student is in terms of ranking them against classmates, really. So a Cat 4 is often something that we will do if we're taking on independent students and they say, we don't know what we need to focus on, then we'll do a version of a Cat 4. And then schools have their own 11 plus. They've got loads of different versions of them. And again, it's quite specific on the school. Independent schools also will typically have multiple stages and they will also have interviews. Okay, right. What we've come for. How do we prepare at home? Okay. Now, if your child is in year 3, I would love for you to drop me a message and I would love for you to tell me if your child is in 11 plus. All right. Okay. So drop me a message. Let me know. Let me know you're there. Okay. All right. So at home, we have got foundation learning for year 3. Lots and lots of reading, lots of foundation skills, things like operations in maths. That's one of the big ones. Spellings, vocabulary, storytelling. I love a bit of storytelling in year 3. Looking at knowing all of those multiplication tables. Looking at being able to add in your head, subtract in your head, and do what we call real life math. So I'm at the cinema and I've got 2 tickets to buy. Can you estimate for me how much it should be? Or oranges are priced at 30p an orange. How much will those be if I'm getting 5 of them? That type of math is going to help your child when they start to prepare for 11 plus. Now, we do a year 3 foundations course. We do it because we get lots and lots of students who are interested in possibly taking the 11 plus. But we also get a lot of people who say, I'd never start in year 3. It's about building foundations. It's not about doing the 11 plus work. Many people will take the year 3 foundation course and then not go and do the 11 plus. And all that means is that they are stronger going into year 4. All right. Make it fun. Make it interesting. Set the foundation for working. And what do I mean by that? I mean introducing homework, because often schools don't do that anymore. Schools won't do it at that stage. Making sure that your child can see that if they put the effort in, then they are going to get a result. They can see their own progression. Start to make sure that they're not going in with this idea of, oh, I'm bad at math. The amount of year 4 students I see who tell me, oh, I'm not very good at this. Make them understand that when they put the work in, that they can do it. And that might mean changing some of the work for them, allowing them to see that progression is more important than getting through the bond book. And that's why year 3 should be all about foundations and not about 11 plus. Because somewhere through that year, you might realize, you know what, I don't think it's for my child. But if you have set that foundation, that praise, that value of hard work, that interest that you've got, the idea of doing homework, none of that goes to waste. And none of the skills go to waste either. All the way up to year 5, the skills don't go to waste. So at home, if you're looking at year 3, start with foundations. Year 4, it is still about foundations, but we're starting to consider 11 plus. We're starting to consider, are they at age appropriate milestones? And if you are wanting to know what those milestones are, come and ask me. We've got an assessment as well that we can hand out to you so you can start to see where your child should be. You would have received some information from it in your email. Start to consider vocabulary, vocab really early. I like to start a little book. And in that little book, I write down every bit of new vocab that we come across. And I ask my students to do it when I'm not there. And we look over it. And I use that vocabulary when I'm teaching. Because if we don't use it, we'll lose it. So again, when it comes to the skills, it comes to the idea of fractions and percentages, but it also comes to vocabulary and inference. If you don't use those skills regularly, then it's going to you're going to struggle with it. And that's why we often say that you want to, you're going to need to, what's the word? You're going to need to support at home. Even if your child has tuition, even if you are doing one-to-one group, it doesn't matter. You're going to need to support at home. And it's just those little things, picking up on what they've done, using it in day-to-day life. Year 4, focus on math and English. Your exams might have verbal or non-verbal. Keep it for fun. We run a verbal and non-verbal class, and we allow students all the way through to do it, because it's not a year 5 specific thing. It's a fun thing. And the more you do it, the more you practice it, the better it gets. It's practice. It's practice, it's a bit of learning, and there's a lot of vocab stuff in there. And there's a bit of logic as well in there. I love it. I love teaching the non-verbal and verbal reasoning stuff because I find it really fun. And that's the way it should stay. Work on that foundation. Try and do it every week. Get your child used to it. But please don't use past papers. People come to me in year 5 and they say, oh, we've done all of these past papers previously with tutors. And I think, okay, now what is your child going to do? Because if they've done a whole load of practice and they've reached year 5, then they have done 2 things. They've either learnt it all, which they haven't, or they've shown that they can do a bit of it really well over and over again. Because actually the important thing around year 4 and year 5 is teaching. It is making sure that they understand it. You cannot just do questions and hope that they will improve. That would be like you trying to learn a language, and all we're going to do is every week speak to you in French for an hour. And then I'm not going to do anything else for the rest of the week. We're going to speak back in our native tongue. And then I'm going to go back and I'm going to speak to you in French for an hour again. You're not going to learn it. What you are going to realize is that you know certain words, and that's all that's going to stay. And so when there is lots and lots of practice, going through workbooks, doing the work over and over again, all you're doing is proving you know it. And that's not very useful, because that means you're going to reach the end of year 4 and you might know a little bit more than you did when you started, but you've not been taught it. It's very different. Don't worry. So if you have siblings, if you have cousins who have taken previous exam papers and they're giving you all of their material because they're like, it's done, I don't want to see it anymore, please have all my books. Don't worry if it says CEM, that's an old exam paper board, GL, CSSE. The focus at this point, not always, but at year 4, it should be about knowledge. It should be about practice. It's not about the specific exam style. So take those in. Right. This is when it starts to get big. Okay. Reshift myself in my chair. End of year 4, start of year 5. This is the point where we've got, if we imagine, it's a bit like, I like to say to my students, it's like doing a triathlon. So year 3, you learn how to do everything. You learn how to swim, you learn how to bike, you learn how to run. You're like, okay, I've got the idea. I kind of know what these skills are. Year 4, you start doing a little bit of practice in each. You get better. You focus on your stroke in swimming. You focus on your running. You focus on your cycling. You start gaining the skills, and individually, each of those bits are going to get better. When it gets to year 5, that's when we start running that race. We start doing those heats. We start practicing. We start doing the mocks. We start looking into, not at the start of year 5, but we need to do what every good sports person does and set goals. If you're setting goals with your child, you are as a team. And ideally, it should be you, your child, and your tutor. Sitting down, setting goals. It's one of the first things we do for our year 5s who come into our group classes. We do goal setting. We look at what are your target schools. So, motivation. Make sure it's there. It is really hard to drag a child through 11 plus prep if they don't want to be there. And that's not to say they'll want to be there all the time, because they won't, because no one wants to be learning all the time. And nobody enjoys, I mean, I enjoy exams, but I don't enjoy the idea of them. So start to think about motivation. Visit the schools. Visit the schools and really, really, really big them up. Isn't it amazing? Haven't they got this? Make sure your child wants to go. Talk to people who are already there. If you've got friends whose children are there, just make sure that you have a chat about them. Right? And think about rewards. Everybody loves a reward. Don't reward the marks, though. Reward the effort. If you can reward the effort, then it's easy because you are then able to remind your child about how much work they're putting in without it being dependent on the end result. And it means that they start to want to do more work, which at the end of the day, 11 plus is going to be about. Again, start your NVR and VR. It's still for fun. If you started it earlier, it would have been more fun, but now it's still going to be fun. As I said, it's a marathon for many people. Some people don't go anywhere near 11 plus until Easter. And those people are probably not you, because you're not turning up to an 11 plus talk at the start of year 4 or year 5, knowing that you're going to start in Easter. If you start in Easter, then you may well go intensive. I have students who join me in Easter. They then work pretty much every day from that point. Most people, it's a marathon, not a sprint. Do you and your child want it? Because if you don't, both of you are going to want to give up at some point. Both of you are going to argue at some point. As I said, I did the 11 plus. It took me, I definitely did it in year 4, did year 4 prep. And there was a big argument between my mum and I, probably, I think in the first term of year 5. And I'm going to hold my hands up. I was cheating. I was looking at the back of the book because we did so much practice, workbook after workbook after workbook. None of it was teaching because my parents left school at 14 and 16. They didn't know how to teach. And so they put those workbooks in front of me and I did them over and over again. And I made that tiny bit of progress. And then I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. So I just started to cheat. And that was the point at which my mum and I had a conversation and we got a tutor involved because she couldn't teach me. Not without there being screaming matches, not without the point of us both wanting to give up, because she didn't know how to do it and I didn't know how to do it. And that meant she didn't know how to show me how to do it. Okay. It's tricky, right? It's a tricky process to do. It's an even trickier process to do as a parent because you've got to be parent and teacher. And that relationship's really tricky. Okay. You need to have commitment to it if you're going to go into that process. And that's what brings me on to the next one, open days. If your child can go to an open day for their target school and they can see everything there and they can see it, then when you both feel like giving up, that's what you can go back to. As I said, start looking at your prep. That's where we're really looking at 11 plus exam specific stuff. When we do our year 5, we do year 5 math and year 5 English classes. We start with all of the general key skills, and then we start looking into all of the exam practice. We start exam practice from the moment our students start, but we don't put a whole paper in front of them. We do teach, practice, teach, practice, teach, practice. So that means that when they do a group class with us, they'll probably do around 45 minutes of teaching. And then the remaining 15 minutes will be going over previous homework, which is exam style questions, looking at exam technique, looking at how they tackle practice questions. At the start of year 5, you need to consider your summer year 5. If you're planning on moving house in the middle of summer, or you're planning on taking a big trip abroad to see family, then you need to know that's coming up because that is part of your training schedule. And so you need to be able to work out how to work around it. And the same thing, if you know there are second stages, you know there are interviews, work that into your practice as well. At home in year 5, support and stretch. Your child will be doing the main skills with their tutor, their group. It's your job to support and stretch at home. You want to be working on those key skills, practicing, stretching their knowledge, focusing on every topic that they're doing and starting to increase that amount of work that you're doing. As I said, we start past papers practice from the moment our students start. We start them really early. We first of all give them only the bits we know they can deal with. Because if you put a whole paper in front of a year 5 student right at the start of year 5, they'll see all the bits they can't do and they'll panic. So we give them that very carefully selected pieces. We then give them bits of papers split up into sections. And then we start to look at whole papers. Okay, now I've mentioned this a lot before, but if you are looking for a year 3, a year 4, or year 5, and you are thinking, how am I going to do this? Then we have the 11 Plus Success Program. The 11 Plus Success Program, these are the topics that are running. It goes all the way from year 3, actually all the way up to year 6. And year 6, it focuses on, from now, looking at second stages, independent schools, SATs, onwards challenge. So all the way from year 3, all the way up. As you can see, our verbal reasoning, our non-verbal reasoning and our creative writing have no ages. And that's purposeful because you can improve at any point on those and you can do those at any point. Here's our team, or some of them anyway. You can see that it's pretty broad. So if we look at somebody like Lucy, Lucy's a current teacher. She works at Abingdon Prep, which is a prep school for independent schools, and also supports with, used to support students in London. So again, looking at grammars. You've got someone like myself, ex-teacher, ex-grammar student, Oxford University graduate, and I focus particularly on selective schools. Maria, who's our scholarship specialist, again, you can see a lot of the schools she's looked at. Sarah, ex-Abingdon teacher, we're looking at people who have worked in that sphere, who have provable results London Consortium specialist, scholarship specialist. Now, they will teach our groups because they have done this year on year on year. They know their stuff because they have done it for over 10 years. That tends to be the type of tutor we use. Those are our top guys. They're the ones that people enjoy going to and that get great results. But our group classes are more than just tuition, because yeah, your child can sit and listen to me for an hour and they will learn something, or they'll sit and listen to a tutor and learn something. But how do you support them at home? How do you know what they've learned? Well, we do a parent video, and that parent video allows you to support them at home. We also, when it gets to summer term, do exam review videos. So they sit previously designed exams. We then go through those exams and do the feedback, and you watch it at home with them so that you can see, oh, okay, that's where they didn't get it. All our lessons are recorded in case you join it late or you miss a session. We've got weekly reports. You can see here, this is one of our reports. It's a year 3 report that's going out. And we also have weekly student support lessons. So they just do their hours worth of live lessons. They don't just leave. They then go on and they do their weekly support lessons. You do your weekly support lesson as well. They get homework and they get weekly reports. And if you want more, we also provide you with reading lists, vocab lists, writing prompts, maths challenges. This, for example, is term 1 of creative writing. And you can see there's a whole load of different stuff about what you should be looking at. Clearly, this one focuses on descriptive writing. So term 1 is including descriptive writing and including narrative writing. As I've said before, some of this needs to be specific to your age. So year 3, it has to be that focus on foundations. Year 4 and 5, we do separate math and English. It allows you and your child to specialize in the areas that you need. It also means that we get expert subject teachers. Year 6, it's all about challenge. And then we've got some that are mixed because, again, it doesn't matter so much with the age, because actually it's about how you focus. So it's about doing your creative writing and getting feedback on it. Actual feedback from tutors who have helped write papers, because that is going to allow you to be able to make improvements, not just sitting in front of a book. Little sneak peek, you can see they're all pre-planned out, they're all pre-written. I've run them for the last couple of years, and they include things like this. So here, this is actually week 1 of our creative writing, and we're already looking at literary techniques. We're looking at something called up-leveling, increasing your detail in writing. And then we've got examples, samples written by tutors to help show students where they need to go. If you are interested, I will be sending an email out where you can book a call with us, and there will be a discount for those of you who are turning up to us to see us. So you can absolutely come and have a call with me, see if it's the right thing for you, see if it's going to fit you. Okay, reasons that you might consider it. It's really specialized. It's a fairly high level of support. We've got tutors who are teachers, examiners, question writers, a team of experts who focus on specific schools, specific exam boards. And again, you can see we are trusted. We're in the national newspapers. We are shortlisted as private tuition providers. I admin some of those large Facebook groups. So we are one of those kind of larger agencies, larger companies that have dedicated our time to 11 plus. We're not just the person down the road who thinks they might be able to do it. We've done it for years and years and years. Okay, now we're coming to the end, and I wanted to talk about how to encourage but not pressurize your child. So it's big things like not comparing them to others, especially if they've got siblings, not comparing your prep to others. And this is partly why when we do groups, we send out, we've got all the way through from week 1 to week 10, you can see what we're doing. But we reserve the right to change it a little bit, because if your prep's different to everyone else, which it's meant to be, then it's special for your child. And that means that we can tweak as we go along. If your prep was exactly the same as everyone else, that would mean your child is the same as everybody else. And we know that that is not true. So don't compare your prep with someone else. If something changes your target school, where you're living, communicate it with your child and the impact to them. Make sure you've got a plan B and make sure it's communicated again. Do phone the local authority or school, or do contact them. Don't rely on other people. Please don't rely on other people. If you take one thing away and you don't want to go and do our groups, then don't rely on other people's hearsay, please. Do be aware that there's very few official tests. So when you're looking at mocks, Education Hotel runs mocks, most tutors run mocks, specialist mock providers run mocks. It's all written by tutors. The official, there's one set of GL official papers written by GL. There's none of the others. So if you are looking at something and they say, oh, it's official, query that, because almost all papers are written by tutors. Lastly, do listen to your child. If your child is saying, look, I'm really tired, I'm really worried, I'm really fed up, then listen to them. That doesn't mean changing exactly what you do, but it does mean involving them. I've talked before about the idea of we've got the tutor, parent, student. And that is a triangle. And that means that there needs to be communication between all of them. That's why we do reports every group session. That's why we do parent support videos. It's why we do student support videos. We need to be listening to each other, because that is the way that we succeed. And yes, I am a tutor, but don't just rely on tuition, because there needs to be that working environment. Okay, questions. If you have questions, please let me know. I will be sending out a call link specifically for people who are in this session, and it will allow you to book into group classes. I'll also send out our group classes. They are from £18 upwards per lesson. So they're pretty cheap for what you get. As you said, you get the lesson itself, it's recorded. Then we get the parent support video, the student support video, homework, reports, and all of the rest of the material. It's not got a massive amount of spaces, but it's got some spaces. We do things in the holidays. So we will be running our October half-term courses, and we'll be doing some around Christmas. We tend to do a lot of interview prep as well when it comes to Christmas. We do support with choices of schools. If you are struggling with working out what school fits you, we have a partner company called Top School and Uni. They support with that. But ultimately, it is a work between us. So parent, student, child. We all want the same goal. We all want to get to the same place. And we have been for 13 years putting in that effort. As I said, I think 76 students this year who will go into grammars or independence who have studied with us. We're looking at a similar number who've gone into 11 plus exams this month. We do this every year. We continually do it over and over again. We rewrite, we retweak. We have been working for the last couple of weeks to upgrade our materials. We've recently introduced our verbal and non-verbal, because we know that that's something that people need a little bit more help on. The verbal is also vocab. So we look at the feedback from parents, we see what's changed a little bit, and then we put that in. All right, so that is the end of today's session. We will be doing another one next week, which is all about what to do beyond, so year 6 and beyond. And if you wish, I'll be putting that out as well on email as well. If you have any questions, please pop them in the chat and I'll go about answering them. If not, then thank you ever so much for joining, and I will see you soon. All right, bye-bye. So if anybody wants to write to me, you absolutely can in terms of the chat. If you're happy speaking aloud, then please do turn on your mic and let me know in terms of question. Here we are.
Hi, Gemma. Thank you for your advice and everything. It's very useful. I'm so glad that we have joined in this. Unfortunately, I couldn't able to put anything on the chat.
That's no problem. Tell me, what is your question?
We live quite far away from London, but we are targeting some schools in London for 11 plus. My daughter is year 4 now in this September.
Yep.
We wonder our targeted school would look at the point of out of catchment.
So, as I said at the start, absolutely look at the individual schools. So every individual school has its catchment policy. I will not advise on catchment. And the reason that I don't is purely that it changes. And I don't want to ever say, for example, on a recorded live, this particular school, okay? Because it can change. So what I would recommend is going through each of the school's admissions policies and looking at those that either you have been told or have found out don't have a catchment, or those look through them and see, do they have inner catchment, outer catchment, where do you suit? Okay, same thing about whether you need to live in that particular place however many months in advance. It changes per school and it can change per year. So my advice for that is always to go straight to the school. Okay.
Thank you, Gemma.
Somebody has asked, how do we support with choosing the right school? We do a full school placement, so it depends on what you're looking for, to be honest. We can do a 1 hour where we chat over particular schools. So you've said, oh, these are the ones that we're interested in. We're looking for this type of school, or we're looking for a school that puts this at the start. What I do not do, and there's, again, I'll tell you the reason, there is no such thing as a good school. A good school is good for everybody. And if there was one good school, then everyone would apply. And that's not the case. It's about finding a school that suits a person. So we go anything from a 1 hour advice call, which is where you bring a couple of schools to us. We talk about the pros and the cons, all the way up to a full school placement service. That means we assess your child. We deal with tuition for your child. We can do tours into schools with your child and with you. We look at where are you based, we look at travel, we look at the research into every single one of those schools. So it's a pretty broad process, but if you're interested in finding it out, drop me a message. Okay. Somebody has said, oh, in terms of the group classes, could you leave if you're not happy with them? End of 10 weeks. So we do them in 10-week blocks. So it is a full year's course. However, we let you know in about week 5, do you wish to continue? Yes, no. If you don't, that's absolutely fine, because you might have found that there's a better fit. And that's all right. That's allowed. That's why we let those break clauses every 10 weeks. Okay. All right. Someone's asked, with the group classes, how do we assess the child? So the first lesson that we do, our tutors are assessing. We look at what your target schools are, and it depends on whether you're doing a math, English, creative writing, kind of how it works. But we also have assessment processes. So I've got the assessments for us right now, and they can be sent out. If you want to send through your child's target school, we'll send through an assessment for you. If you enroll onto the group classes, what we do is we mark it and we give you feedback. Anyone else who would like to ask a question? As I said, you can drop me a message or you can unmute yourselves and let me know. No, no one else seems to be asking anything. I'll give you a couple minutes, and at that point, I will then close the room. Okay. Oh, here we are. All right. How many are usually in a group class? It depends. We've got around 5 or 6, I think, booked into the creative writing, all the way down to around 3 or 4 that will join our verbal reasoning. So we look at a fairly small class size, just because we want there to be that individual focus. We're not a company that's got 20 odd students, as you would have probably gathered from the presentation I did today. For us, it's about feedback, it's about parental involvement, it's about student involvement, and we can only get that with a small class size. Okay. All right. What I will be doing is I will be sending out an email with all the information about our group classes, and with a special offer for you guys, for people who've turned up today. And hopefully we can get you booked on. They start at the end of September. So it would be great to see you there. All right.
Thank you.
All right then. Thank you, everybody. I'm going to close the room because I think we are all done. Okay.
Thank you so much.
All right then. Thank you.